It's everywhere you look these days. European soccer, I mean football, is absolutely everywhere, even in the United States. With the top leagues featured on various streaming services, access to the beautiful game has never been easier for Americans, and never before has as much of the top American talent been featured overseas in the European game. Sure, we've got our own league here, but the MLS is just not as good as the European product. So more and more American fans are getting hooked on the European version, which is frankly the best version of the beautiful game. But without natural geographic allegiances, how does an American fan pick a club to support? What league do you even start with? And then, once you do, how do you pick a team? It's a dilemma that every American fan faces at one point or another when they make the jump from soccer to football. And we're going to help you through it. Here on Pints and Punditry at Total FIFA Career Mode. Alright, welcome back. I'm going to get right into it here because before you go clicking away somewhere else, I want to get my main point across, which is, when trying to pick a European club to support, there is only one thing you need to do, and it's very simple. What you need to do is don't pick one. Trust me on this. Do not try to force it. Don't go looking up stuff about the clubs, trying to figure out where you fit, because it will not work. And I'm going to explain why in this video, and how you should actually go about it as we get later in the video. But if you're here looking for some magic formula on how to land on a club, I'm here to tell you it does not exist, because I tried and I failed. But not to worry, the game is going to pick for you, and that's why it's the beautiful game. Before we dive in any further, I definitely want you to hit that subscribe button for me, and while you're at it, hit the like button. It really helps with the channel. I want you to comment below. I would love to hear your story about how you chose your favorite club, and for the European fans who didn't choose a club that's your hometown team, or maybe picked clubs in other countries to support, I'd love to hear your story, so definitely share those below. And lastly, give us a follow on Twitter at TotalFIFACM, where we discuss everything football related. So as you may have guessed by the name Total FIFA, this started out as a FIFA channel, and I may still get back to that at some point this year, but I've kept that branding for two reasons. One, I put a lot of work into it and I like it, and two, I want to acknowledge the role that game played in the fandom, and still plays in the fandom, of so many fans around the world for so many years. The game of FIFA has been ubiquitous with the game of football for decades now, and it helped so many fans, including myself, increase their knowledge of the game, its rules, its players, and clubs from all over the world that I wouldn't otherwise be exposed to, particularly here in America. Which leads to my first piece of advice for budding European football fans from America, which is absolutely to play FIFA, or EA Sports FC as it's going to be known starting this year. Yes, it's a flawed game. Yes, it's a video game. No, it is not at all the same as real football, and knowing FIFA and understanding it does not make you an expert pundit. But it's a great way to learn about the game, learn the players, and it will shorten your learning curve by years, because if there's one thing you need to know about European football, it's that it is vast. There is so much of it. There are so many leagues, so many players, so many clubs, and more recently, so much international politics that plays far too big of a role in the game. So playing a game like FIFA or Football Manager will help you shorten your learning curve greatly, and I highly recommend it. Just don't confuse it for the real sport. Of course, when we talk about real football, we do it in our Pints and Punditry segments like this one, which I created because as an American fan of European football, it can be hard to find people to talk about the sport with. European fans, particularly British fans, you've got it easy. You can go into any pub and chat with fellow fans without much effort. But those of us in America sometimes have to turn to the internet. So I poured a drink, adjusted the content here on the YouTube channel, and here we are. So how do we go about this daunting task of selecting a club to which to tie your health, happiness, and emotional well-being for the rest of your life? Well, that's no small task. So why don't we start with a smaller one, like figuring out which league to watch? Now, there's no wrong answer here, and there's no need to pick just one. In fact, I would encourage you to watch them all, even after you pick a club, and especially before you pick a club, because each league has its own history, its own style of play, and as we'll get to in a little bit, style of play is very important in this club selection decision. Now, The natural choice for a lot of you is going to be the English Premier League for a number of reasons, but that doesn't make it automatically the right answer. It's the easiest league to follow because the games are on regular cable here in the States. There's a game typically featured on NBC every week. There's plenty of other games on weekend mornings or weekday afternoons on USA. And then you can watch every single game if you subscribe to NBC's streaming service Peacock, which thankfully did not drop the first part of its name and rebrand the way HBO Max did. The Premier League is also the league with the most talent, and because it's, English, there's no language barrier for many of the players, making it easier for assimilation for American fans. Most of you will probably gravitate towards a Premier League club, and that's fine. Just make sure to explore the other leagues as well because they all have great things to offer. The Bundesliga in Germany can be found on ESPN+, so can La Liga in Spain. Both of these leagues have some of the top clubs in the world. Serie A in Italy is featured on Paramount+, which, if you have kids, I'm sure you already have. The most difficult league to follow of the big leagues in America is Ligue 1 in France because it requires you to have a cable package that offers beIN Sports, and that's not always a given. The second piece of advice is to watch as many of these different leagues and clubs as possible so that you can get a feel for the different styles, play, identity, of different clubs, different languages, different leagues, because it's not the same game across the board. There's wide variations, and it's likely that you're going to be drawn to one or the other. Which brings me to my third, final, and by far most important piece of advice when selecting a club, which is, as I said before, do not, under any circumstances, attempt to pick a club to support before watching a ton of games. A ton of games. You know Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours theory? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Watch a full season of games. Just watch. Watch as a neutral. Go in with a clean slate. Do not have a rooting interest. Just watch the game and see who you're drawn to because it's going to happen. A team will present itself to you. You will naturally be drawn to a club, its history, its uniform, its fan base, its style of play, everything about it. Just watch and enjoy the game for the final time in your life without a rooting interest to kill your soul, because once you pick a club, there's no going back. Unlike in FIFA, there's no reset button. You don't get a do-over. That's your club, for better or for worse, and trust me, it can get a lot worse. This was the mistake I made when I decided to get into European football. About a decade ago, my work schedule changed, and I went from working a lot of Saturdays to having them off, so I found myself in front of the TV on Saturday mornings, where the Premier League was the only live sports on. So I watched. It was exciting. I didn't know many players or teams, but I know sports. I understand the concept of promotion and relegation, and I enjoyed having something new to watch. A few games in, I began to get hooked, so I knew I was going to need a team to support. Now, this was near the end of the season, so summer hit, and I was already looking forward to the upcoming fall. I couldn't wait for the Premier League to start. I was going to watch it religiously. I bought FIFA and played it all summer. Thought I had a pretty good handle on things. I did not. But in the downtime of summer, I made the crucial mistake that I do not want you to make. I tried to research teams. Don't do it. It's the worst thing you can do. And to make matters worse, I tried to compare them to American sports teams to find the best fit. What a terrible idea. You see, I'm a Philadelphia sports fan here in the States, and that means a few things. It means we're passionate, we're a blue-collar fan base that's used to suffering and having this underdog complex. But I didn't want that for my blank slate of soccer fandom. I wanted better for my fledgling soccer self. So I Googled things, stupid things, really stupid things like comparing Premier League teams to NFL teams and other garbage articles like that, thinking it would help me better understand where these teams come from, their culture, their identity, their fan base, and perhaps it did, but you can't force passion. Now, I was told not to do this. I had put some feelers out on Twitter on how to select a club, and I scoffed at every piece of advice that I was given, which was to just not choose a club. Same thing I'm giving you right now. Same thing I'm saying, and I ignored it. It seemed dumb. I was told a club will pick you, and I laughed. Is this an English thing like the wand picking the wizard in Harry Potter? What are you talking about? I was obviously going to pick the club that I wanted to root for. Everything else seems stupid. How American of me to think I knew better. So I entered the following Premier League season with a team selected, thinking I had it all figured out, and I am not going to tell you who it was. but something was off. It wasn't a front-runner type thing, they were winning, but I wasn't connecting with them. I didn't feel that rooting interest that you have to have in sports. But I kept watching, and not just that team's games, but every game I could get my hands on. It helped having a British pub within walking distance, and that's another piece of advice I'd love to give, which is go watch games with people. Hear their stories, high-five strangers, get caught up in the culture of football fandom, and let it consume you, because it will. And by watching, conversing, and consuming as much football as I could, I got hooked. And not just on the game, but on a particular club, and not the one I had set out to follow. Manchester City spoke to me. Their style of play lured me in. This was Pep Guardiola's first year, and it helped that he was one of the few managers I had heard of. I'd also heard of that Sergio Aguero fellow, so it gave me something to cling to. But Manchester City always being in possession certainly helped. Their passing, their fluidity, the way they moved, it was just beautiful compared to the disjointed way that some of the other teams operated. They also won a lot, which certainly helped, and played a role in my decision, although this was before their truly dominant phase. Now, I was not well versed enough in the football world at that point to know the whole sovereign wealth backstory. At that point, I didn't even know the story of 2012 and the 93-20 Sergio Aguero goal, which was for the best. It means I was able to select my fandom based solely on the product of the pitch, which was invariably the point. But after watching City play for a game or two, it became clear that my selected club from before the season was dead wrong, and I immediately realized the validity of what Twitter had recommended to me. I watched, I got hooked. For me, it's been City or bust ever since, which luckily for me was like buying Intel at 6. City have been on this incredible run, and I'll take all the front-runner comments anyone wants to hurl at me. I was blissfully unaware of their status as big spenders when I dedicated my fandom to them, and frankly probably couldn't have told you where they stood in the table at the time. All I knew is that when I watched them, soccer was fun to watch for the first time, and they were why. So thank you, Pep. Now here's the downside. Managers, players, styles, they come and go. Sergio Aguero is gone from Manchester City, and Pep will be one day soon. Will their next manager play with a similar style that's as enjoyable to watch? I can feel the Tottenham fans who just suffered through the Antonio Conte era shaking their heads no. But what's done is done. Now I'm City till I die, and that won't change no matter who comes and goes. But it does speak to the risk of hitching your fandom to a particular wagon that is a coach or a player, because they are so transient and so expendable. Before settling on a club, ask yourself, what is it I like about this club? Is it a particular player? Check his contract status. I would be devastated for someone who began watching football last year and felt drawn towards Harry Kane and planted their flag in the ground as a Tottenham supporter because of it. What about a coach? Is it his style of play? That's a better one, but you got to look at the history of that club and their retaining of coaches. If that club is Chelsea, you'd better find a better reason to follow them, because the coach ain't going to be it. But don't do any of that until you watch. That's for after the fact, when you think you know, but you want to make sure you're making decisions for the right reasons. Don't force it. Don't research. Don't try to pick your club ahead of time. Don't learn about the differences between big clubs and small clubs, or blue-collar British towns versus southern shore towns. That's my advice. Just grab a beer, no matter how early it is in the morning, and go watch the game, preferably with other fans. Watch and let yourself be drawn to a club, because I guarantee it will happen. And once it does, you'll know, and you'll be hooked. And God help you from there, because your fate is sealed. Let's hope you choose the club wisely. What are your thoughts? How did you find your club? If it wasn't your club that's, from your local town in your backyard, I want to hear your story. Comment below. Tell me how you landed on a club and how that decision was made. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button for me. Hit the like button on this video. And give us a follow on Twitter at TotalFIFACM, where we always keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry. This is Total FIFA Career.